Was this to be the Saturday that North Carolina had that letdown? You know the one. It inevitably comes at some point in the midst of what you think is going to be a special season. It ultimately guts you, ruins your chances at a conference championship or making the college football playoff. It's a primetime game, it's a big time opponent. Well, for the first half at least, it seemed like it was indeed going to be that game against Miami on Saturday night. Oh, yeah. It's a good thing they play a second 30 minutes.
You are Locked On Tar Heels, your daily podcast on the UNC Tar Heels, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, it's Monday, October 16th, 2023. Welcome into the Locked On Tar Heels podcast, the only daily North Carolina show out there. I'm your host, Isaac Shade, and I want to thank you everydayers and everyone else joining us for making Locked On Tar Heels your first listener watch to get your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Coming up on the show today, I want to let you know we will have our rewind, our recap of live action. That will be on tomorrow's show. Also, for your awareness, the basketball AP preseason poll will be out this week, so keep your eyes open for that. We'll obviously talk about it when it comes out. Speaking of rankings, North Carolina football is number 10 in the nation in both polls, AP and coaches poll. Great news, great stuff there. I didn't think they would leapfrog the teams they needed to, but they did, and they're number 10. But specifically for today's show, as we always do, what we're going to have is our 3 stars of the game. We're going to have our what to watch for recap, where we look back at the things I told you what to watch for. We're going to have our shady stat of the game, our weekend whip around and wrap up. But before we get to all of that, I want to get to kind of the biggest takeaway from this whole thing is that this game to me was a tale of two halves. I kind of alluded to it there in the cold open, but there's often this game with Carolina where they just don't respond in the way that they need to or that you expect them to. And you can usually feel it out within like the first drive or two of a game. You're like sitting there sipping your drink and you say, something's wrong here today. And you just get that vibe and that feeling. Maybe you had that Saturday, maybe you didn't. Like last year, I know it wasn't like big time opponent, but this is what Carolina did against Georgia Tech. They let the Yellow Jackets hang around. Carolina's looking for their 10th win, and then they lost to Georgia Tech at home. Because here's the thing, history tells us that we just keep holding our breath until that Saturday. What Saturday is it going to be? It's going to come. And you just keep hoping there's going to be a season where that Saturday never happens. Could it be this year? We will wait to see. But at least for one more week, Carolina has pushed it off. Through much of the first half, I thought legitimately, yeah, this could be it. But it was not, because as I said in the cold open, you play a second 30 minutes. And at least the first 15 of those, the third quarter, was exactly what Carolina needed to do. As part of this, I want to acknowledge, you hate to be down at the half, and it was the first time that Carolina was losing at half all year long so far. I'd rather just boat race every opponent from opening kick till closing whistle. But it is a healthy thing to face some adversity sometimes, to have to deal with the locker room feelings of being down 17-14 in this case, to deal with the pressure of coming out and performing in the second half. Are you going to play free, or are you going to let the weight of, we're down and we're undefeated, get to you? Carolina came out and did everything they needed to. They handled that adversity, I thought, marvelously. They responded so well. And it's not like the game was over, right? It's just a 3-point deficit, but still, a deficit is a deficit. And that said, I don't think Carolina, and I don't think you think Carolina was performing at the level they wanted to in the first half. They hadn't figured Miami out quite yet. They weren't letting Miami do a bunch offensively, but it was appearing like that Miami defense was going to do enough to keep the Carolina offense in check. But then Carolina comes out of the locker room at halftime, reels off the first 24 points of the second half. In so doing, they forced Miami into back-to-back turnovers. Tez Walker exploded. He had already scored in the first half, but this is where he had two of his other touchdowns, including that 56-yarder in the third quarter. Let me just give you the third quarter stats so you can get a sense of how quickly this thing turned from just the kind of blah of the first half into what the third quarter was. Third quarter stats. You ready? Score: North Carolina 21, Miami 0. Total yards 182-32, North Carolina. Rush yards 45 to -6, North Carolina. Passing yards 137-38, North Carolina in the lead. First downs: Carolina 8, Miami 3. Total plays: Carolina 21, Miami 14. Average yards per play: Carolina 8.7, Miami 2.3. Turns: Miami 2, Carolina none. Sacks: Carolina got 2, Miami got 1. I could go on and on. Carolina came out and dominated the third quarter. Again, you would have loved them to do it already, set the pace, set the tone, do everything you need in the first half so that you don't have to in the second half. And the second half is just about putting the game out of reach. But Carolina essentially both took the lead and put the lead out of reach in the third quarter, and it was phenomenal. And yet, Miami kept pushing. I think Carolina got probably a bit too lackadaisical in the fourth quarter, but Carolina did continue to do things to extend the lead. Noah Burnett continues to be a great weapon, nailing his field goals. He hasn't missed this year. I better knock on wood right now, not to jinx him. 9 for 9, I think it is right now. And in fact, what exactly does that look like, that tacking on? Well, Carolina, 5 of the 6 wins, in fact, all 5 wins against Power 5 opponents have been by double digits. The only game they didn't win by double digits was against App State, and we all know how that rivalry goes, So 5 double-digit wins already this year. Carolina had 3 in their 9 wins all of last year. 3 double-digit wins. Tar Heels have 5 right now in mid-October. But you got to keep going. That's the thing. It can't just be, hey, we overcame adversity on Saturday night, tale of two halves, and thankfully the second half we did a lot better. That it can't just be like, oh, that was nice, because now you've got in front of you what appear to be 3 very winnable games in hosting Virginia on Saturday, going to Georgia Tech next week, and then hosting Campbell the week after that. But my goodness, the second you take your foot off of the accelerator, the second you don't get a rep in as good as you should at practice, that's when a Georgia Tech can beat you. Campbell, you're going to beat them, all right? it is what it is. But we know how things have gone with Georgia Tech, and they will again unless the Tar Heels are ready to go, because that game's in Atlanta, and the Yellow Jackets, you saw what they did to you saw what Miami did to themselves, but Georgia Tech did beat Miami. Carolina's got to keep it going. They've got to keep their foot on the gas and continue to grow. For example, here's a massive area of growth from Saturday night. 14 penalties for 147 yards, and Miami didn't even accept all the penalties, so it would have been over 150. It's almost laughable that a team could get there. That boggles my mind that the Tar Heels almost got 150 penalty yards. That said, it really is always nice for a coaching staff. It's the best thing to get a win and still have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 things that your team has to buckle down and work on. But you can also, if you're Mac Brown, use this to say, you got this, pretty comfortable win with 147 penalty yards, and yet you did what you did on the scoreboard. Can you imagine how easy this would have been on yourselves had you cut that in half to 70 penalty yards or less? So great teaching moment for Mac Brown. Great opportunity for the coaching staff to use that. Tale of two halves. The second half was what the Tar Heels need. Now they got to come out against Virginia next Saturday and back it up again from the beginning of the game, just like you want to do. Well, I gave you my what to watch for on Friday's little mini pod, and I want to follow up on it and just see how right or terribly wrong I was with those 4 things I told you to watch for. Oh, and I was wrong because that's what we do. And I bet you do too. You want to follow up and see how we did with those. We'll investigate it in just a second. Right after I tell you that this episode of Locked On Tar Heels is brought to you by Game Time. Man, great news for me. I just realized that Nate Bargatze, my favorite comedian right now, is going to be near my family this Friday, and I need tickets for it. It's a no-brainer where I'm going to get them. It's Game Time. I know they're going to have the tickets I need. I know they're going to have them at a fair and reasonable price. And I know I'm going to be able to see what the view from the seats I'm getting look like from right inside the app. Game Time is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for any event you're looking for. Football, basketball, baseball, music, comedy, theater, whatever it is, you name it, they've got it. In addition to that view from your seat feature that I love, I also really like their lowest price guarantee. I really like their event cancellation protection policy. It makes me feel comfortable to go ahead and buy these tickets. So take the guesswork out of buying the tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege, LOCKEDONCOLLEGE, for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Today's episode of Locked On Tar Heels is also brought to you by Prize Picks. Prize Picks offers weekly promotions that can help lead to big payouts like Taco Tuesday. Each Tuesday, Prize Picks discounts select player projections up to 25%, providing you even more value than you are already getting. Plus, there's the Prize Picks reboot policy, in which your entries stay in play even if one of your players gets injured, like that whole host of NFL players this past Sunday. If you have a player who exits the game in the first half and doesn't return, that player gets rebooted. Prize Picks is the only daily fantasy sports platform with injury insurance. Seriously, this thing is so crazy easy to do. You pick 2 or more players and choose more or less than the stat that's given. For example, Drake Maye's passing yards for this week, 225.5. You better pick more on that every single time. So go to prizepicks.com/lockedoncollege and use code LOCKEDONCollege for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, that's prizepicks.com/lockedoncollege and use code LOCKEDONCollege for a first deposit match up to $100. Prize Picks, daily fantasy sports made easy. I want to remind you also that coming up this Friday is Locked On College Football Kickoff Live, 11 a.m. till noon Eastern. The guys are bringing you all the best information to get you ready for this weekend of college football. Don't miss it, 11 a.m. till noon Eastern on every Locked On College YouTube channel. Let's get right back into this thing. We're looking at my what to watch for last week. It's a great way to wrap up the game and see if those key indicators that we were looking at came to fruition. So let me give them to you one at a time, and we'll see how Carolina did. Number one, I said that something's got to give between that Miami defense, which was the best rush defense in the nation coming in, with just the entire defense holding teams down. The Carolina offense, which is clearly elite itself. Just as a rough frame of reference for you, Carolina's offense had gained coming in 350 or more yards of total offense in all 5 games of the season to that point, including 3 games in which they gained over 500 yards of total offense. On the opposite side of that, Miami's defense had only surrendered more than 300 yards of total offense once all season to this point. So something had to give. Who was it going to be? Who was going to win, the Carolina offense or the Miami defense? You already know this, but it was the Carolina offense who once again racked up over 500 yards of total offense. Let me just put it to you this way. Miami hadn't allowed 40 points in a game this season. Now they have. Miami hadn't allowed 100-plus team rushing yards this season. Now they have. Miami hadn't allowed a single rusher 100 or more rushing yards this season. Now they have. Miami hadn't allowed 500-plus yards of total offense this season. Now they have. Miami hadn't faced Drake Maye yet this season. Oh, but now they have. You see what I mean? This Carolina team, is, especially the offense that we're talking about right now, is unique and is special and is something that just doesn't come along very often at many places in the nation, and in particular, North Carolina. So again, let me remind us all to love it and take advantage of it while it's here, but also that this thing is next level, and not even a vaunted defense like Miami's can hold it down. Now, you still got to see what's going to happen against Clemson, against Duke. Boy, that Duke defense is something good, y'all. I'm dead serious. And against NC State. That's your final 3 regular season games. So you got 3 weeks to get ready for those, but I'm telling you, it's coming, so get ready for it. But so far, there's nothing that slowed down the Drake Maye train. I guess Miami did stop Drake from getting to 20 completions. That's the first time all year he's not done that. So what to watch for? Number 1, something's got to give. Carolina offense, Miami defense, check mark. Carolina offense, you're the winners. Number 2 in our what to watch for is Tez Walker. We saw glimpses of Tez Walker last week, who was deemed eligible Thursday, had a walkthrough Friday, and just did what he could on Saturday, and did what he could was good enough for 6 receptions and not a ton of yards, but still, you're like, oh. So my question all week is, what does a fully prepared Tez Walker look like? What does Tez Walker with a full week of practice and playbooks and reps with the first team, what does that look like? Especially as we know that Kobe Paysour is going to be out for an indefinite amount of time. Got to have Tez Walker up to speed and going so that you can start he and Nate McCollum and J.J. Jones. Thankfully, that's exactly what happens. So the answer to that question, what does Tez Walker look like with a full week of preparation? I don't know what terms I want to put it in, but I will say that the answer is that I love whatever a full week's prepared Tez Walker is. And I bet you do too, right? You're right there with me. You just say, hey, I love it. I want more of it. Keep going, Tez Walker. I mean, maybe the answer is as simple as saying he is that dude that we have hoped for. That, it's sometimes you worry in a situation similar to Tez Walker's that you make more of it because of who you expect them to be or who you think he'll be, or just because of the logistics of the Tez Walker ineligibility stuff. And really the person you're getting isn't as good as you think. Oh, he is. He is absolutely as advertised. He deserved that first team preseason ACC selection. So you pair that with Tez, with Nate McCollum. You pair that with J.J. Jones continuing to blossom. You pair that with hopefully getting Kobe Paysour back on the field, with the Omarion Hampton coming out of the backfield with the 3-headed monster that's the tight ends, and you're in good shape. So it's not hyperbole. I do not believe it's hyperbole in any way to say that he changes the ceiling of this offense and therefore changes the ceiling of this team and therefore changes the possibilities of what this season could be for North Carolina. None of that to me is hyperbole. I hate that Paysour is down, but thankfully it's at just the right time, and hopefully he can come back and play later this season. What to watch for? Point number 3 is who wins the turnover battle. Miami's coming off a game in which they had surrendered 5 turnovers to Georgia Tech, including that very costly fumble that shouldn't have been at the end of the game. Well, let's just put it simple. Carolina wins this one as well. They succeeded here. The turnover battle was 4-0 in favor of Carolina. Tar Heels, 0 turnovers. Miami, 2 fumbles lost, 2 interceptions. The fumbles went to Myles Murphy, and Cedric Gray grabbed that one that was just like right as Miami was trying to get in the end zone. That was a fortunate opportunity. And then the interceptions also said Gray, and then Gio Biggers got that one to seal the game right there at the end. And again, no giveaways, no turnovers for the Tar Heels against a Miami defense that had been causing some. That's how you win a football game right there. We talked at length about how close this game would probably be and how closely talented and equipped these teams were. So you got to do something to separate yourself. And that's what the Tar Heels did, because if the turnovers are more evenly split, that's a football game that might have gone the other way or might at least been a lot closer. So Carolina wins the turnover battle 4-0. What to watch for? Point number 3, check. What about number 4? This was more of a, hey, look at the big picture and see everything you got in front of you if you win this game. Point number 4 was, if you win this game, you very clearly and obviously stay undefeated, but you get to bowl eligibility as quickly as you possibly can. You extend your winning streak over Miami to 5 games. Check, check, check. Carolina did all 3 of those. Maybe that's part of the first half as they were feeling the pressure of some of that. I'm going to answer that own question to myself and say, I don't think it was. I just think that they hadn't figured out Miami yet. And that Miami defense is legitimately good. It's just that the Carolina offense is that much better. The big thing that I did miss, though, is within talking about this and trying to extend that winning streak, I said, but hey, listen, expect a close game because even in this 4-game winning streak, 3 of the 4 have been by exactly 3 points. We're going to get that again. I prognosticated a final score of 31-28 Carolina. And boy, this is the one where I was dead wrong. Yes, the final tally, the final margin, I should say, was only by 10, but it didn't. Yes, the scoreboard said it was that close. The game didn't feel that close at all. So Carolina is still undefeated, both overall and in conference. In fact, the only other 2 teams undefeated in ACC play are Florida State and Duke. And so massive matchup with Duke coming up in a couple weeks here. But the other undefeated team, Louisville, went down at Pitt on Saturday. So that is good stuff there. Well, who are the players that made this victory possible? I wish I could name every one of them, but I've narrowed it down to 3 that I think impacted this game in a massive way. Plus, I want to get you my shady stat of the game and the weekend wrap up. We'll get to those in just a second, right after I tell you that this episode of Locked on Tar Heels is brought to you by Athletic Brewing. Now's the time for the Game Changer of the Week, brought to you by Athletic Brewing Company. Much like Tez Walker and Omarion Hampton, Athletic Brewing has completely changed the non-alcoholic beer game. They make non-alcoholic beers that actually taste good, full flavor, well-crafted, just like a full-strength beer. Seriously, Tez Walker, Omarion Hampton, they accounted for all 5 of North Carolina's touchdowns on Saturday against Miami. It was phenomenal to see Tez Walker burst onto the scene. So great to see Omarion Hampton continue to do what he's been doing all season long. You can find Athletic Brewing Company's non-alcoholic brews at a store near you or buy online at athleticbrewing.com. First-time customers can use code LOCKEDON to get 15% off your first online order. That's code LOCKEDON at checkout for 15% off at athleticbrewing.com. Near beer, exclusions and conditions apply. Athletic Brewing Company, fit for all times. Okay, it's our 3 stars of the game. Let's just start with those 2 dudes I just talked about. Number 1, we're going to get to Tez. He's getting all his shine and all his flowers. So let's start with Omarion Hampton. This dude is just popping off this season. Last week was the first game all season in which he did not score a touchdown. Well, I was like shocked to see it, honestly. But he continues to be right at the top of the nation in terms of total touchdowns scored and rushing touchdowns scored. In this game, nearly had his second 200-yard rushing performance of the season. Had 24 carries for 197 yards and a touchdown, plus 2 receptions for 20 yards and a receiving touchdown, his first one of the year. So he just keeps racking them up, does Omarion Hampton. I believe now that is 9 total touchdowns this season, 8 of which on the ground. And as I said earlier, Miami had not surrendered 100 yards rushing to a team this year, much less an individual. And Omarion goes out and blows that all up by himself and nearly doubles it, getting to 200, just shy of 200 rushing yards on Saturday. Absolute baller status. You love to see it. Omarion Hampton is going. In fact, I saw a couple scouts tweeting about, one specifically said something to the effect of just writing down a reminder to get Omarion Hampton in the 2025 NFL draft. Because remember, this dude's a sophomore. He can't leave yet. Number 2 on our stars of the game is Tez Walker. We can't not put him in this list. He is, again, that guy. 3 touchdowns on 6 total catches. Half his receptions on Saturday went for a touchdown. That's not a rate you can keep up, nor will he. But the fact that he did it is ridiculous. In total, 6 receptions, 132 receiving yards. He even added 2 rushes for 19 yards. Really, it was 1 rush for 20 yards, and then there was kind of a silly play Carolina ran with about 2 minutes left that netted him -1 yard and got him back to 19. Also importantly, Carolina had to survive 2 onside kicks in this game, and Tez was the one to recover the second one of them. Bryson Nesbitt made a really difficult play on the first one, did a great job, almost had a Willie Mays kind of over the shoulder catch, dropped it, but was able to fall on it and cover it up. But anyway, then the second one, Tez just went up and snagged it out of the air, went down as you're supposed to do to get that one. But you also, Field Yates from ESPN's out here tweeting about Tez Walker, how incredible his performance is, and that he expects him to be a Sunday star. So you got a Sunday star throwing the ball. You got a Sunday star catching the ball. Come on, man. This team is special. I'm just telling you. Number 3 of our stars of the game, Cedric Gray. Now, you want to keep giving this defense in totality credit for continuing to take massive steps forward. But just wanted to single out Ced for his performance on Saturday, especially after getting the wind knocked out of him. Led the team 10 total tackles, 7 of which were solo, a tackle for loss, an interception, a fumble recovery, and a pass breakup. Just a pretty silly stat line. And Ced's numbers, at least right now, aren't quite as elite as they were last year in terms of being right up at the top of the nation. But it's because this year's got a lot more help in front of and behind him. He's still got power doing all that work next to him. But the defensive line is stepping up in better ways. It's adding depth. The secondary is stepping up in better ways. And, just trying to sustain all the injuries they had dealt with. And it's just really good. It's so much improved from where it was last year, not to mention that the offense is taking steps forward too. And so everyone is growing together. So I know I singled out Cedric, but the combination of Ced Gray, Power Eccles, and Kamen Rucker, let me tell you what they did on Saturday. Combined, those 3 guys, 21 tackles, 14 of which were solo, 2.5 sacks, 3.5 tackles for loss, 1 interception, 3 pass breakups, 5 quarterback hurries, and a fumble recovery. Come on. I hope you saw the video I put up on Twitter of the 3 of them almost in unison celebrating a play. Just absolutely silly. By the way, I should apologize. I've been taking a lot of sips of water today. I've had a cough thing going on, so I apologize to all of you, and thanks for sticking with us here. All right, let's move now to the shady stat of the game. I gave you on Friday a shady stat of the game foreshadowing. Here's what I think you should be watching for in terms of a stat that could stand out. And the stat was the fact that Carolina, in each of their first 5 games, had scored 30 or more points. And if they got 30 against Miami, 30 or more, it would tie a Carolina record for the most straight games of 30 or more points to start a season, tying the 1914 Tar Heels. As you well know, that's exactly what Carolina did. They got 41 points, which means they have scored 30 or more in each of their first 6 games this season. Just the second team in Carolina history to do so. What's cool about that 1914 team is they actually had 40 or more points in each of their first 6 games. That's pretty wild. But for the 1914 team, their streak ended at 6. So if the Tar Heels can get 30 or more against Virginia on Saturday, they will hold the Carolina record for doing this. Getting 30 or more points in 7 straight games to start a season would be wild. And in fact, 4 of the 6 games this year have been 40 or more points. And let me add on by saying that Adam Lucas tweeted out that it's the first time in Carolina history that the football Tar Heels have opened up ACC play with 3 straight games of 40 or more points. Wild stuff there. Weekend wrap-up. Let's just go through it quickly. Women's soccer tied. Surprise, surprise. Wake Forest won all on Friday. Men's soccer lost at Wake Forest 0-1 on Saturday. Field hockey won both their matchups this weekend at Syracuse on Friday 4-1 and at Albany on Sunday 4-3. Volleyball sweeping their matches this weekend 3-0 both at Syracuse and at Boston College. Great stuff there. Friends, it's great to be back together after the weekend. If you want to have more conversation with us, dive into the Discord. The links to that are on show notes, video and audio. We're having great conversation. You need to come be part of it. Well, also, great other ways to interact with us. You can follow the show on Twitter at Locked On Heels. Follow me at Isaac Shade. You can email the show, lockedontarheels@gmail.com. Don't forget to subscribe to the show on audio and video formats. Smash the like button if you're watching to let us know you're here, and we'd love to know your comments on this win over Miami. It's always a great day to be a Tar Heel, right? Oh, yes, indeed it is. You everydayers, thanks again for tuning in with us. We'll be back tomorrow. But until then, peace.